We're back with Artist to Art, part two. Part two with Mia. It's gonna be great. We're here. We're here. It's great. Hello. Welcome. We're just gonna bring her on here. Mariana.
Did that work?
Hey. Perfect. 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 First try.
Unbelievable, honestly. I'm usually
Right?
like the death of anything that's technical.
Well, you figured it out, so that's
Did I though?
you did.
I had to be
you
walked.
got it.
I had to be really walked through that one.
It's okay. It's okay. But welcome to your first shared Instagram live.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And you're where are you?
Oh, is that Molly?
Oh yeah, say hi to anybody.
Hi. I'm in Pittsburgh in my house. I would have done it from my studio, but I don't have Wi-Fi in there, which is kind of awesome because I go there and I just shut off the universe. But here I have Wi-Fi, so no shutting off here. Wi-Fi and 4 children, so definitely no shutting off.
On all the time. And that's how you separate it, is you have your studio.
Yes.
And then you
yeah.
So that helps
very
you
nice
a lot.
Big studio. I have 2,200 square feet. Yeah, it's pretty great.
Wow, where's your studio at?
It's well, you're in Pittsburgh, right?
I am.
So it's in the East End area, North Point Breeze. So
there's that giant building right before the bridge, right? Or right before the tunnel. Kind of like there's like
I was in that building before, and I ran an art space called the Mind Factory in there. But I moved. There was an issue with like continuing the Mind Factory because of the rent that they wanted. So I didn't fold that necessarily. I just stopped having a brick and mortar for it, and I moved my practice deeper into Homewood.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about the Mind Factory at all, or what you'd like to do with it? Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Since you brought it up.
Are you familiar with it?
Not really. And also for what I am, we have a lot of people on here who are not. So
true. So back in 2012, I'm going to go a little bit further.
Go as far back as you want.
So I moved into this studio from, I was actually by the Bloomfield Bridge. I moved over to this new studio in 2010. And an opportunity came up in 2012 inside this big industrial building. It was formerly the mine safety equipment building. And this 4,000 square foot space opened up in the building. And at the time, a majority of the tenants were artists and had been there for, sorry, my dog is like walking around.
It's okay. People love dogs, by the way, so feel free to have a guest star.
Yeah, she might join us. So it was the majority of the tenants were artists, and it was really this cool sort of like organic art place that happened. And I think a lot of CMU professors had spaces in there because CMU has a drama department in there. So they knew about the space. It was a little like hidden from the rest of us maybe until it wasn't. And then a lot of us moved in. And in 2012, rather, this larger space, this 4,000 square foot space became available. And a friend of mine who was also in the building was like, hey, do you think maybe you want to try to do like an art collective or something within this large space? And sounded interesting, and the space was amazing. It was like so much work to get it to be amazing, but it was amazing bones, you know. It was just big and open and great as a display sort of situation. But we sort of we didn't last together very long. She kind of went on her separate way. We're still good friends, but I really wanted it to be an art space to display work. And she was thinking more of this, I think she was thinking in terms more of like a commerce sort of situation. And it just wasn't the location for that. So, so I turned it into a gallery, and I ran it for 4.5 years. And I did it just kind of like, I was just like winging it the whole time. That's kind of my MO. I just wing it, like today, winging this.
I love it.
Yeah, so I ran it for a while, and we had so many wonderful, beautiful things happen in that space, and some people curated for the first time in that space. It was really like an opportunity for the local community art community, and music community. I had concerts in there. I had dinners in there, pop-up dinners. It was basically like, come on, give me your idea. Let's see if it is something cool that we can do together. And often it was. I don't think I really turned down anybody. It was kind of awesome. The one problem was it was quite expensive, and I couldn't seem to get traction from any like foundations or anything to support it. So it was really, I was supporting it with my art sales and everything, and I would occasionally rent it, so that helped subsidize it somewhat. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. And like I said, I kept the name, the Mind Factory, even though people, I don't know if people consider that building that, because that was the thing that was happening, but really it's not. And I did trademark the name, so I took it with me.
As you should. Yeah.
So the most recent thing I did under the banner of the Mind Factory was I brought myself and 3 other artists to Art Basel, to Art Miami, and we did Aqua Miami, and that was in 2017. And that was a pretty interesting experience. I had been down there many times to see the shows and everything, but I hadn't participated. And participating was interesting and cool. And it was nice to do it with a bunch of other Pittsburgh artists. I really enjoy the Pittsburgh art scene quite a lot. I think people are great here.
Yeah. So what did you learn from that experience, from having gone and seen it and then having been in it? Like, what are your takeaways?
Well, I'm sort of a sensitive person at times. So when I go down there, it feels very detached. Like, I always think of the art documentary, The Artist is Present, and how she's like, it's just that intensity of the artist and being present to your work and being present, and especially in performance art, you're very present. But like I always say, when I go to art fairs, it's like the artist is not present. Like, there is no sign. Like, it's just about selling work. It's just about the collector. It's about people's fashion. It's about like all these other things, rather than like what to me art is and the experience of that. So as long as you can sort of detach yourself from that, from wanting it to be about you experiencing the artist and their body of work, if you can detach from that, then you can appreciate it on the level that it's meant to be appreciated on. But I think I had a hard time with that the first couple of times that I went.
So it was really just like reframing your mindset of like, what is this event supposed to be?
Yeah, I think it's all about perspective, and everything about life is about perspective. It's like, how can I frame this in a way that like I can understand it and also either walk away from it or incorporate it in what I'm doing. So I think that I went for 3 years, and then I took a break, and then I went back as an exhibitor, and I haven't been back since 2017. Of course, they didn't have it this year either, so. Or they're not. So
you get a break.
I should say that because it's actually in December, so they're not having it this year.
Right. It's going to be off for an unknown amount of time.
Yeah, things are weird.
Things are totally weird. Things are very strange.
Yeah.
What have you been seeing? Any galleries? So I've just did my first full solo painting art show in this COVID time.
Yeah. In Johnstown, right?
In Youngstown.
Youngstown, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It's the same distance away as Johnstown. Okay. It's same distance, different direction, but still.
Were people able to access it physically, like with masks or whatever?
Yeah. So I think it's just like, yeah, I just limited it to like 3-4 people at a time. And also like outdoor space I found is like an important thing. So I mean that's just like my experience having experimented in it. Have you been seeing any other experiments in this strange
Um,
time?
I think there's an adjustment period for that sort of thing. I think that there will be very interesting creative ways of circumventing what was traditionally, the gallery system, and doing it maybe even more independently as individual artists. I think it should be very interesting to see how this all unfolds for people, and how, I mean, you're talking about people that their entire profession is based on being creative, right? So I'm sure we're going to come up with some interesting things. I'm the vice president of the Associated Artists of Pittsburgh, and we have had a little bit of that struggle. Like, how do we, support our membership during this time, and how do we, through exhibition, when you can't physically be in exhibition space. So it's been tricky, but I think that, they came up with some interesting ways to do virtual exhibitions. Exhibition's a big word for me, because I just feel like it's different when it's done this way. Like, I really do feel like it's definitely like a physical thing to be. But yeah, it's going to be, I think it's going to be quite fascinating to see what unfolds, and how it all shakes out. And I think we're going to be implementing a lot of the new technologies and a lot of the new ideas that come out, even going forward, when this is well done. So
Yeah. What would you like to see, or what would you like to experiment with?
Everything. I don't know. I did say, I admitted to you earlier, and I don't know if we were live yet, that I am deaf to technology. But that said, I really love the idea of all these different things that are happening, and I would love to. I also really, really enjoy collaborating. So I would love to, and I've been talking with a few techie people about this for years now, but I would love to do something collaborative with somebody that is not just better versed, but versed in things tech. Because I think that there's opportunity there to sort of, especially with something that's as old as oil painting, which is what I do, sort of delving into that in a new creative way via technology is exciting.
Yeah, because I think there's different ways that people are kind of take different ideas that are out there, whether it's kind of like augmented reality, virtual
Yeah, exactly.
reality, or
Augmented
web
reality.
space. Yeah, I just did an interview with I helped do another channel. It's called Freedom Tapestry Project, and it's
Mm-hmm.
based in between like LA and Damascus, and we work with like Syrian artists. And I just interviewed the AR person who did the Masters of the Sun, the like the AR part, the Masters of the Sun
Cool.
for the comic book
Mm-hmm.
from the Black Eyed Peas. So the Black Eyed Peas released a comic book, and then they released an augmented reality version and a virtual reality version. So I interviewed the augmented reality like project lead,
Yeah.
and so that was really interesting, like where art can have that like that tie over into that
Oh
realm.
yeah. And I think that what's cool is it's really at the beginning of exploring that. So I love that. I love seeing things unfold, and being sort of at the very, very beginning of what that could mean and what that could be. And it's an exciting time. I mean, it's a lot of uncertainty, but I was speaking with somebody early on in this whole lockdown situation, and they were like, well, how's it going, blah, art. And obviously it hit the art community really, really strongly, and a lot of people are experiencing very difficult times. That said, as an artist, and this is something you well know, it's always uncertain for us. you know
Always.
it's like, okay, now I just have to readjust this next time. And I think that's probably what the majority of our colleagues are experiencing right now, is like, how do we readjust? What is the next navigating thing that we have to do? And I think that it's not beyond our wheelhouse. It's always there. So it's just figuring that out.
Figuring out what that is. And what really strikes me as interesting is I found a lot of artists who didn't know that PUA was for them.
Yeah.
That was really that was really hard to like see, like, oh, like you're struggling, like the government is actually doing
Yeah.
something. But
Right. But, and then a lot of artists just don't have access to people that can help them navigate that. So I
yeah,
think that I mean, everything happens so quickly. It's not really anybody's fault, but there should
no,
probably be better ways to have, or a better platform rather, for artists to say, okay, I'm struggling right now. Is there something for me out there that can help me? And there probably is too, Erin. Like I don't know,
no, I mean, but it's
maybe
kind of the thing
Google.
is if neither of us know, is like, do what is there, how many people do we talk to, and then share that information, the
Yeah.
information sharing.
And that's usually really how I get all my information, is information sharing. Like, I'm fortunate in the fact that I'm very entrenched in this whole artistic community of ours here. And so I don't go even more than a day without speaking with a colleague or somebody that's affiliated with the arts in some way. And so I'm always, being informed, and hopefully passing that information on. I mean, I really do consider mentorship an important role for artists when you reach certain levels of your career. So
Cool. So how do you see that mentorship coming into play in the Pittsburgh area, or where do you think it is, and where do you think it could go? Have you seen that shifting?
I don't know that there's any, and again, there probably is some sort of like formal connector for mentors, but like I think that we're in such, Pittsburgh is so unique in many ways. Like it's so small, but it's a city, and so you have all these resources that a city might have, but you still have it, the size of it still lends itself to being able to be very connected and meeting people. And there's not this sense of in my opinion, there's not a real sense of like a dog eat dog sort of situation. It's really, really how can I help my friends who are also artists, and how can we help each other and grow as an art community? So mentorship, I think, often happens just organically that way, right? So, you go and you say, oh, well, and maybe it's something that like you want to learn something about, perhaps if you're like intrigued by glass blowing, for instance, and you go and approach a glass blower and you say, I'm wondering if maybe I could sit in and see your work for a day or two. I just feel as though everybody seems to be very open to these sorts of conversations. I frequently have people come to my studio, and I really don't have much of a closed door policy. It's silly too, I think.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful to like be able to share that, like what that is and could be, and to encourage other people to open their doors in similar ways.
Yeah.
That might not even have thought about it. I just know I have a lot of different artists who follow me from all over the world. So they don't necessarily know a lot. I don't necessarily have a lot of Pittsburgh people on here, and I don't necessarily talk a lot about the Pittsburgh scene. So you're bringing
so
that into,
something.
yeah. It's like I have 1% of this account is Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So for me, this is like I've had very little like discussions of Pittsburgh and like what it is.
I'm like your Pittsburgh artist then.
What?
I'm like your Pittsburgh artist.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if that's great.
No, we went from Ottawa, and now we're here in Pittsburgh, and I consider myself just a universal man.
Very good. Very good.
Living up. So
art is universal. So
exactly. So here, let's check out some of your work here.
Okay. Funny because I didn't know what you were going to do with these, so I just kind of like gave you the first things that were on my phone.
Perfect.
And I really like this piece, but it's not done. So I'm working on it in my studio currently, and it actually is something that developed. Okay, there is a little story for it.
Tell us.
Prior to the shutdown happening, I had a contract and a purchase order for this, and I know you mentioned it before. I worked large scale. So this is a 6 foot by 10 foot piece. And I had this purchase order for Nordstrom in Texas. And I had recently done one this year for their flagship store in New York City. Different series, not at all this series at all. But
congratulations also.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was cool. But so I kept making sure that this situation was still on because things were getting really dicey and weird. So I was like, hey, you know, is this commission still moving forward? Yes. I was like, because I'm going to be buying the supplies, and that's a lot of, you know, that's a lot of money up front and everything. Yes. So I get this 6 foot by 10 foot stretcher, and I stretch it and I gesso it, and I'm all feeling all good about myself. And I go home, and I literally go home to an email that's like, and like I told you, I don't get good reception in my studio, so I didn't get it there. Go home to the email that's like, so the order's been canceled. And I was just like, okay, this is the beginning of what's not going to be a fun situation for me, for my colleagues, for the other people in the building who I've grown very close to. It's a maker building, and so it's just a lot of us that we work, you know, in creative fields, and we work on our own primarily. So that was like the first sting, and it was a bad one because it was something that I was really, you know, had already worked into what my year was going to look like. So that said, I started painting that. You can see that area on it's very, very matte, the black area. And it's actually, I'm an oil painter, but that's actually acrylic paint. And I bought that paint because it absorbs 99% of light. And so it's crazy flat. And I just thought, wouldn't be interesting to experiment with that with oil. And those of you who don't know, with oil paint, while you can go ahead and paint on top of acrylic, you can't paint acrylic on top of oil. It doesn't mix that way. So so you have to be careful if you're going to do both. Where you're putting acrylic and versus where you're putting oil is something that you kind of have to plan out a little bit. And I'm not much of a planner either, so it's a really interesting exercise for me. But yeah, so then since I didn't have this directive anymore, and I didn't have this particular series that I had to do for them, I just went, I'm just gonna see what comes out of me on this one. And I really like it. I think it's shaping up to be one of my favorite pieces, really.
Wow. So it sounds like you're really taking time to experiment in this time.
You know what, honestly, Erin, I always do. It doesn't, again, this pandemic and the situations that have occurred during it and the weirdness of everything, while it has maybe changed the energy that I bring to the work every day, and therefore changed the work in that sense, I've always throughout my career taken time to just say, I need to do something different. As soon as I feel comfortable doing something, I know that I am doing the wrong thing by staying comfortable. So I try different things all the time. And you know, some are major flops.
Some are what?
Major flops. And that's fine. Like, you know, I think that I feel as though if you're not constantly pushing yourself to learn more and to see where something can go, then you're just working. You're not really, I don't know, you're not engaged in it.
So that engagement is like a huge part of your work to you.
Yeah. It's important. And I sometimes I get a little worried that, like, I don't know where else I haven't gone. And that's so silly because I haven't gone in so many places. There's so much more that I can be doing and learning and whatever. But like, yeah, that's definitely part of it. So you can see in that picture that you have the big, tall black piece. I used a lot of that paint on it. So that was actually the third experiment with it. So it's right now, it's sitting in my studio, and it's completely just a black canvas. And I have to tell you, I love it. I love going there and looking at it and thinking, wow, the possibilities are kind of endless with this one. And so, but again, because it's acrylic and I work with oil, I have to be very careful about how I want to attack it. Whereas with the piece in front of it, the blue one, just attack it.
It's interesting as like contrast to your pieces.
Yeah, I know. And it sits on top, and it really, and actually in person in the studio, I have a smaller piece that I decided to start with first, which I typically do not do. I typically just say, I'm going for it. So the idea of having this sort of like practice or study for something is really unusual for me, but I kind of dig it. I mean, I think that's something that maybe I could get into a little bit. But so I did a smaller one, and I'm playing around with that, and I'm seeing then the relationship of what I typically do on something that I don't typically work with, and it's pretty cool. I like it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's cool to see how you're experimenting with it. I think that's really good inspiration for all of us to see.
Yeah, now this is weird. Like I told you, I just sent you random pictures. These are
I like the randomness. I like how it, it mixes it up a little bit. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to comment or question in the comments. So what's going on here?
So this is like a derivative of a series that I started in, I think I want to say 2012. I did these two pieces. Actually, it's so weird the things I've done with my career.
Well, so we love to hear about the weird, the weird stuff. What different turns has it gone in that surprised you?
Well, I think that the weirdest part was initially right away. It just sort of like took off, and people seemed to be really engaged right off the bat. And that to me was surprising. I think because I came into my career much later in life, and really just doing it for me, the idea that that other people responded to it was extraordinary to me. And I'm grateful, and I'm happy that it provided me the opportunity to keep exploring and to keep getting bigger and really doing whatever I want to in the studio, which is like, it's phenomenal. I'm very, very fortunate. So, but these little guys, and they're little because like usually I paint much larger things, they're derivative, and I was playing around with, and I think maybe I alluded to this before. One of the reasons why I like to experiment is that the experiment usually informs the next thing. So the last experiment I was doing was on linen with these colored splotches that are translucent. And they started to feel, in some cases, like hard candy, and just like so yummy and bright and beautiful. And so I took this older series that I had done with muted blues and greens, and I decided to change it up a bit with these sort of poppy, hard candy type colors. And so that's kind of what you're looking at right now. And they're all in process. This is literally from my studio, like the other day.
I like that. I like seeing what's like new and fresh and inspiring you. So what are those images in between the hard poppy candy type of?
They're really, so the theory behind the series was that, well, I don't know if it's a theory so much, but like what I was thinking about when the series evolved was, it's interesting, the concept of, in photography, of cropping your space, and you're, as a photographer, really making everybody else see the space that you are interested in. And so you're dictating that, right? And I think that typically in abstract work, well, yes, you're confined to, generally speaking, confined to a canvas or something, and you are suggesting this is where you look. It's kind of got all these places to look and things to consider. And I liked the idea of taking an abstract and cropping it in a way that I'm suggesting a space, perhaps a habitat, perhaps it feels like, you know, a landscape, whatever, but it's a pure abstract in the middle. And these this function of cropping it in some way, and even the colors will contribute to how you then view it. I think it was a fascinating idea to me, and that's how it started.
So you have like, are those photographs in the middle and then you're painting around them, or how is that?
No,
Or
that's
what is
just
that's just
abstract
black
paint.
and white? Okay, I just can't see like that close. So
Yeah,
so
that's
did you
probably for the best. They're still being worked out.
Nice. Nice. What are you still working on in them?
The cropping, the colors, the buildup. You know, because I work with oil paints, something like this can take months and months and months. And there are paintings of mine that have taken years. And I may have even sent an image of one or two of them that have really in their lifetime, if you will, changed from various stages. I used to like to say that like my paintings go through infancy and then adolescence and then adulthood, and the adolescence part is very trying, both for the painting and myself. And I've had some paintings that I put in timeout for like years because I can't even deal with them.
I understand. Do you ever feel like it's because they're too good, or because they're just like you can't like struggle with that problem, or what is that
It's
for
never
you?
because they're too good. It's you know, I understand what you're saying. There are some moments in work where I feel as though it's really achieved something, and I worry about losing that. And I think over the years I've come to grips with the idea that, or the fact that, like, sometimes you have to lose the precious stuff. And when you do that, it becomes actually beautiful. So like there's a difference between what's pretty then and what's beautiful, right? So I think pretty is like surface, and you know, you have these little moments that are precious that you're, you know, and then beautiful is, you know, it's scarred, it's dark, it's got balance of these forces, and it just has this depth that I feel I'm trying to achieve, I guess, with the pieces that I work on.
So you move it through like that, like where it's like pretty and to where
Yeah.
it's like really
Sometimes
has that deep beauty. That's where you're like
that's what I'm looking
working.
for. Yeah. And you know, sometimes I don't want to say often, but sometimes I do fail, you know, and I can see it. I can see the failure is there. And that's not to say that they're not good paintings or that they're not, you know, they haven't achieved something, but like for me, they haven't achieved that that balance of you know, life is ugly sometimes. And what's nice about doing what I do is I can speak to that, but draw out the beautiful things in that too. Like, what have you learned? What do you see? What has become of that ugliness? How have you transformed it?
Has that been like from life experience as well, or mostly like painting, or is that like back and forth for you? What's that?
Oh, I think my painting is definitely just reflective of my life. So I think that it's life experience. I think it's just, you know, going through different things in one's life, and being able to, like I said earlier, reframe, you know, what's happening so that that you can manage it, or even take from it something positive that may not have seemed as though it would be. So, yeah, I think it's definitely life is reflected in my work.
Do you have any life experiences that you'd like to share that that have really
Sorry.
impacted? No, it's okay. I'm just like, wonder, you know, if there's any life experiences that you'd like to share that that have really impacted your work recently or in the recent past, or at any point in time,
Yeah,
really.
I really one very formative life experience, and I think that you know, really it still is very influential in what I do. Happened when I was in fourth grade. I mean, we're talking about like so again, it's like this lifetime of things that get incorporated in my work is how I feel about it. And the specific event there was that, and I should say, both of my parents are artists. They went to Rhode Island School of Design. Both my brothers are artists. Well, it's an art family. And in the early 80s, art was one of those things that got cut back on. So my parents both lost their positions at the same time. And they said, hey, they took it as an opportunity, and they were like, well, we've always wanted to do humanitarian work. And there was a connection that they had with this Episcopal church in Grenada. And so they moved our whole family there. And so we were supposed to do this rather long stay, but it was 1983, and there was a small war that occurred. Anyway, we were in the middle. So we wound up being in the middle of everything, and we were especially in the middle because of where the fighting was occurring, and it was a very intense experience for a 9-year-old, and intense in both ways, because prior to the moment of the coup, the military coup that then was very bloody, prior to that, it was this gorgeous, insanely beautiful, rich, colorful experience that I was having that was so different from my life in America, and so embracing. I went to school there. I had friends, and they were the most beautiful people that I had encountered in my life. And we were there for Carnival. So you can imagine, like, you know, seeing that was like mind blowing. And so it was all these beautiful, wonderful experiences, joyful experiences. The interactions with people were some that I will never, ever forget. And then you had this really horrible event that, you know, injured so many there. And I remember writing to I actually wrote to the president afterwards, and I was like, you know, I'm really worried about my friends. We had to leave. We had to be evacuated. My family had to hide out on a beach. We had to take a helicopter to a aircraft carrier. It was really intense. And I remember having to leave everybody so abruptly was very traumatic. And I didn't know if they were okay. And I didn't know if their families were okay. So how that sort of transformed me and how I took that into adulthood was, number one, I love getting to know people. I love traveling. I love hearing other people's experience and seeing different perspectives and getting a sense of that and truly being part of that. So I really wound up pursuing that. And I went to school for languages because I thought, you know, really the best way to communicate with other people is through their own language. And I'm not really actually that great a linguist. So I did live in Italy for 2 years. I can bust out some Italian, but my French and Spanish have disappeared, and anything else, it was far gone probably before it started. But that's also one of the reasons why I think art is so wonderful, and I'm so close to it and so powerful, is because it is a global language, and it is the best way that I have found in my life to communicate with the most people in a really profound way. And that to me you couldn't give me a better gift. That is life to me. Other people and engaging the world and engaging, and being outside of yourself. I think that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. And that also is why I paint so large too, because as a child, I was always really most inspired by paintings that were bigger than me. And I think it was twofold. Number one, because I lived by the ocean, and the ocean I had that experience. I lived on an island in Rhode Island, and I grew up there. And, being on the ocean, you realize you're just this little itty bitty speck, and you're really not that important. And there's a liberation to that feeling of realizing you're really not that important, because then the problems that you have associated with that are even less important, right? So everything becomes a little more open, and the fear of getting it wrong kind of washes a little bit away, and you realize you have all this space in front of you to do whatever it is. And that's so great. And so for me, being in front of a large painting is that same experience. It's like you can delve into that rather than with smaller works. The work is part of your life. It's part of your existence. With these larger pieces, and that's why I think I've done so many really big ones, the biggest being 62 feet long, is because then you're forced to be in it and you can lose yourself to that. And I just find that experience very liberating.
Wow. When did you start doing the large scale work?
Immediately. Yeah, no, so as soon as I started doing pieces and people seemed to be responding and buying them, and I was able to put the money back into the work and get bigger canvases and work on those, I would say in the first 6 months that I really delved into it in terms of like a professional, I was already doing like 8-foot paintings. The biggest one probably at that time was 6 foot by 8 feet. But now, you know, the largest single painting I've done is 7 feet by 24 feet, just on one canvas.
Wow. So you just kept going bigger, and then you found homes for them too.
What's that?
You found homes for them too, right?
Oh yeah. So yes. Yes. Well,
sometimes.
Most of the time. So the 62 foot one that I did for a show here, I was the Emerging Artist of the Year in 2014, and I had the entire first floor of the Pittsburgh Center for the Arts to work in. And so I decided to do this whole room where wherever you stood in the room, you were surrounded by the work and hopefully felt as I do when I'm immersed in my work, you get lost to it. And so I did that piece though in sections. So in that case, I sold off the sections, you know, so because nobody's going to have 62 feet to put this stuff in. But yeah, the 7 foot by 24 foot piece that I did was for a client. It was a commission, actually.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, there's a big piece. I always love seeing these things because there's like 3 dudes moving it, and I move it all over the place in my studio. I'm just like, but yeah. So that one's 7 feet by 12 feet. I love that one. Yeah. That's one of my favorites because that evolved after that solo show I just spoke of, and that it took so much energy, and it was so emotional to do that show because it was all about talking about having a depressive disorder and having to understand and work through those things that I sometimes feel. And so the show was it was a very raw version of me. And I think you probably have this experience where like any show that you do is you're raw, you know, you're standing out there sort of saying, this is who I am. And it can be terrifying. So that show was emotionally very, I don't want to say draining because that's not correct, but it was very emotional. And this piece that you have up was a complete departure from that. It was just pure happiness going into my studio and just going to town on this piece. And it's like almost, you can't really tell from that picture, but it's like almost entirely scribble. And I really, really enjoy scribbling. You can see in the one behind me that I really enjoy scribbling because it's also how I draw. So I draw like blind contour drawings without, you know, looking at the page because there's no expectation there then. And so anything that you do is just so of you, and that should make you feel, or at least it makes me feel satisfied, I guess. And so the scribbling is great too because it's this abandon, you know, can see why little kids love doing it because it's just like this complete abandon and joy. And what I like too is that people, as we age, try so desperately to put meaning to it, to assess value to things, right? And like that's why abstract work is often very interesting too, because people want to compare it to something else. Oh, it looks like a field of flowers, or it looks like an ocean, and it's not. It's just a complete abstraction. But we tend to need that as we get older, and we need to know what we're dealing with, because the idea that we don't is terrifying. I don't feel that way, but I think that that's a common way of perceiving things.
How do you deal with that when someone says, "Oh, I see this in your work," or "I see that in your work"? How do you embrace that? Yeah,
I love it. I love people telling me what my work says to them, or I don't really. I was gonna say I love when people tell me what my work means, but that's not true. I like hearing what it means to them, and I like the stories that can, can evolve or emerge from something that I assess a totally different narrative to, or meaning to, or just even emotion to. So I think it's really cool to hear other people have something like that. That's a connective, that's that global language that I speak of, is that there's something connecting them to it. Oh, that's a part. So that's the one I did for Nordstrom in New York City, but you can't really.
It crops it in weird ways.
It does. That's really cropped weird, but it kind of looks cool that way. I like it.
new crops for the
right?
New age.
Yeah, that way that you have it cropped right now feels more like a big wave. I like that a lot. But in person, the actual piece definitely translates more like a landscape, which again goes back to that idea of like people needing to have that sense of that orientation, right? That helps to view things. And I find that fascinating. I love that. Yeah, so I do work with a lot of designers. And while this series wasn't particular, I mean, I developed this series on my own. It seems to have taken a lot of, it has traction with design people. I think because it's fun, it's light, and the series makes me really happy. There's just a happiness in it, and there isn't that quite the intensity, but it's intense in a different way to me. Like, well, this work behind you and everything is so additive and like movement oriented, and I have all this like depth and other things going. That series to me is more contemplative. It's more like you got to sit with each mark. You got to, really think about what the next one's going to be. And I'll tell you something, doing that series and the series that I did prior to it, which is a little, this is more of an evolution of that series. There's a lot that can go wrong very quickly. And so, it does take so much time just thinking about what the next mark should be, what the next color, what makes sense, what makes it harmonious, what makes it peaceful, what makes it balanced. And so I really enjoy that departure from the really emotive way that I typically work. So it makes me relax for 2 seconds and really think, rather than do what I normally do, which is just
So it changed your way really to perceive your own work.
It really did. So I wish I had a picture for you of the original series that this is an evolution of. But
Feel free to make some stories and tag me, and I'll repost them. So if anybody's currently watching, they can see that. Oh.
So the original series, you see me?
Yeah. You're
the
good.
Original series was very interesting to me anyway, because I was leaving my studio, and one of my first studios, and I had been there for 4.5 years, and it was really, really difficult, even though I was going towards to a studio that was even better and twice as big, etc. it was difficult to leave the studio behind because so much had happened in my life. I had really catapulted with my career. I was looking at being a single parent because I was divorcing, and I have 4 children. There was a big life change. And I was moving to this other studio, and I was taking on the burden, the financial burden of doing that, and wondering if my career could sustain it. And so there was a lot of different, things going on when I was leaving there that I felt as though I wanted to speak to that experience in some way. And so the one thing I knew with certainty was every mark on the floor of that place was mine. There had never been another artist in that space prior to me. So I thought documenting the floor and doing some great, awesome, like photo installation would be a great way to commemorate the 4.5 years. Turns out I am a terrible photographer, like awful. Again, death to tech, right? So, it just didn't translate, and it wasn't meaningful to me because it wasn't my expression. It wasn't my voice. And so, I thought about it for a while, and I determined that working on linen, which was the first time I'd ever even gone there, was the right way to express what I wanted to. And I did these 8 pieces, and let me tell you, Aaron, I was terrified that people were going to think I was a nut, and which is fair. But yeah, so I was really worried that it wasn't going to be embraced or understood, right? And the first pieces I did, and not to be small, I did them all 4 by 4, 4 feet by 4 feet. And there wound up being 8 of them, which overall dimensions 8 by 16 feet. And it hung at the Carnegie Museum of Art. So there goes Poppy Seed.
He was excited.
Yeah. So can you grab Poppy?
That's how you know that it's live, that we're not editing. This is the way it is.
Yeah.
This is the way it is. We've got
crazy.
Interesting.
Go crazy. So yes, it was really that was one of the biggest, I think, changes for my personal practice, and as a result, it's really transformed itself into different ways in which I paint now, and I think I've evolved because of it, and I think that the work has become significantly more mature in that way.
Wow. We probably have about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes left. So
okay.
Just FYI, I'll let you know when we have 2 minutes.
Sounds good. Yeah, you'll have to cut me off because I'm kind of a talker.
What's going on here?
Okay. So those 2 pieces. We've already gone.
Oh yeah. Okay. We're moving on. This is part of that
we did
series.
that too. I told you I didn't know. And this is I guess more typical. This is happening right now in my studio. Again, pieces that were in process, but this is a little more typical of what my early work was like, and it's sort of like revisiting that, but it's revisiting that, like, to my point earlier, with a different sensitivity and understanding maybe a little bit more about being contemplative rather than totally attacking it. So I really love working in this way because it's so color driven, and it's so, and to me, this is very much like my experience as a child, and the I see people as color, like not like aura, not any of that, but like I just see the vibrancy of people. And so for me, rather than it being like an abstracted forest or garden, rather, to me, it's about people. It's about like energies of people.
And you were seeing that when you were in Granada, right, with the different people. Have you talked to them since then?
So Molly keeps coming up. She just said,
yeah,
great interview, Mia. So Molly and she was my best friend in Grenada, and I found her on Facebook. Gosh, it had to have been like 30 years after I lived there, and it may have even been more. It may have been like 33 years. and we reconnected, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to do that. And I was so happy to hear that her family was safe and everything. And because I really had no idea. I had no clue. I mean, we wrote one time, but I didn't know, from an adult perspective, how things were for her. And she's living in Brooklyn with her son. So yeah.
Wow. That's a whole other thing with COVID. So I want to ask you, how has COVID been for you? Like, would you like to share anything else about these last few months?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, another thing that I really firmly believe in for artists and people in general is, being generous and engaging in your community. So when I first had to move my studio to my house, I couldn't work like I normally do. And it was one of those things where I could have been like really sad about it, or tried to do something different. And so I decided to do these 12 by 12. It's like something I've never done before. And I was really kind of timid about it because I don't know that I can contain myself in that little space. Right. But, so I decided to do those as if people contributed $400 to this GoFundMe that I was supporting, they would get one of these. So 100% of the 400 went directly to service industry people that I have very close friends at Superior Motors. I don't know if you've ever been there, but like they've been so supportive of me and my career, and the wait staff there and the kitchen staff there and everybody.
I've heard so many good things about it, actually.
Oh, they're just the most wonderful people. And with COVID and everything shutting down, some wait staffers and some people in the restaurant industry don't have any backup support. And so this was something that I could do, that I felt like, and with everything being uncertain anyway, this was something that made me feel positive and made me feel like I was helping somebody else out. So, raised almost $10,000 for them doing it.
Wow. Would you consider other ways to do that where you could invite other artists? Because there's a lot of artists who watch this like now and later on. There's a lot of people that watch this later on, but
again, it's just like, be creative. If there's something that you enjoy and like a group or a community that you feel strongly about, like all I did was I reached out to the GM who started the GoFundMe for the staff. And I said, what do you think if I donated 5 pieces, and anybody that paid $400, they show me a snapshot of the $400 donation, and I'll make them a piece. Well, after making 5, I said, why am I stopping there? I'll just keep doing it until people don't want them anymore. So I made like 25 or something like that.
Wow. Congratulations.
It was good. It was really, again, it's sharing that experience and this weird experience. It's like almost like commemorating that in a way too. All these people are getting this weird version of me, really, which is interesting. I don't know if it's a weird version. It's fine. It's a fine version.
Well, we've got 2 minutes left here,
okay,
a little less. So what else would you like to say to the people, to the artists, to the different communities that are watching this now and later?
Oh, that's a lot.
You got it. You got like 30 seconds, a minute.
Oh, I just, I guess really just to keep believing in what you do and to be as authentic as you possibly can. And it's the only really, truly way to live your life. And I feel as though when you do live an authentic life and you embrace people and you embrace kindness in your life and really just stay away from things toxic and unkind, then no matter what you're doing, you're putting in the best things that you can. And I think if everybody were to do that, all those boats would rise.
Awesome. Thank you, Mia. Thank you to everybody who's watching this. I'm Aaron Jack, and this is the art. Let's see. I just changed the name to.
I know.
I just changed the name. Artist to art. Artist to art. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I'm doing a whole series every Tuesday, afternoon at some point with artist galleries, people in the arts. If you have someone you think I should talk to
Yeah,
or should
absolutely.
talk to
I have
me,
plenty
let
of
me know.
people. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, let me know because I'm just like talking to galleries, people who could be useful, or useful, interesting, intriguing, whatever, like you. um, all of those things. So thank you for being all of those things.
Thank you,
Um,
Aaron. I had fun. I didn't know I could
awesome.
fill an hour, but apparently I can.
Apparently, it can be so much more.